Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media and production. Media production. Our second hour is usually something we want to spend a little more time on. We changed our schedule around a little bit today. We had a great subject, and we moved it because I thought I was out of town, and I was so selfish. I was like, I want to host that one, and so I was out of town, so it got moved, and then I was not out of town, and Bill was feeling under the weather. So everything's been rearranged. So now we just got Q&A. So if you've got questions, make sure to ask them. This is a great day. We've got a great panel. And you can use this little QR code if you're not in Mokana. That's askofficehours.global. Or you can go to Mokana and you can ask questions, vote questions up. But we will go until we run out of questions. And so go ahead and throw those questions in. And make sure to vote on the questions. It's getting more and more important to vote because we really get a lot of questions. And we need to know which ones you want us to answer. So let's go ahead and jump into the questions. And go ahead, Mitch.
Thank you, Alex. First up, Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. What is your favorite part of your job in media production?
Go ahead, Chris.
You know, Roscoe, I'm obviously in post-production. I think you know that. I like post because I've realized over the years I'm not very good at making things, but I'm better at making things better. And so I like coming in, toward the end and saying, okay, let's polish this up. And I'll even go so far as to say that when we all worked under one roof, it was pretty common, mostly just based on my schedule, that we would let other editors start projects and then just let me come in and run the ball over the goal line, so to speak. So that's my favorite part, is let's see what you got and try and make it a little better. I will say it's sometimes it's frustrating because you feel like, you're the new captain dropped on the bow of the Titanic after Captain Smith just ran it into the iceberg, and this boat's going to go down no matter what I do. But I like that part of it.
I realize that if I ever do a post house, I just want to call it the Lemonade Factory because you're making lemonade out of lemons. We gotta go. That'd be a good one. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I know this sounds like a smart answer, but it's truth. I like getting paid. And yesterday I got paid on a job, and the client sent me a nice thank you note telling me how much they appreciated working on it. It just doesn't get any better than that when you get a client that likes what you did, thanks you for it, and they'll be back.
Looks fake, Courtney. Mitchell.
I don't know if that's his handwriting. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I like that too, especially if the people above the director come up to you at the end of the shoot and thank you, the lowly, whatever you're doing, and say, we couldn't have done this shoot without you. That's really satisfying. But my favorite these days, since I'm mostly retired, is disguising myself as a lowly teleprompter operator, mild-mannered teleprompter operator, going on the set and watching all the newbie production companies and watching all the newbies fail and go down in flames, and me sitting back there going, I kind of knew that was going to happen, but hey, I kept my mouth shut. I'm just the teleprompter operator.
I am the cameraman. Yeah, I like the figuring out of, for me, because I do live, and I definitely prefer live. I will admit that as soon as you get me into a post environment, I'm like, oh, this is really tedious. Chris and I are a good match because I'm all about the shoot. I pay a lot of attention to very small things on the shoot. Once I'm done, I'm like, who do we hand these files to? Within a day, can I just get these out of, I don't want them around because if they're in my office, someone's going to ask me to do something with them. And it's funny because I came from post, but I do not like noodling around with the stuff after I've shot it. I'm shot it and I think part of it is that, I did about 2,000 events in over about 6 or 7 years. And if you count that into the years, it's a lot of events. We would literally, focus on one event as soon as it wrapped. We'd say we'd have our, all the little pleasantries with the client. We talk about what we'd say it was great to work with you and blah blah blah, and then literally get in the car and boom, we're talking about the next show. And I never, and you just get this, and that show would just fade into the background, and didn't think about it again, it just disappeared. If it was a big one, then we might go out, that night or whatever and talk to the team, and we'd do kind of an informal, postmortem. But I think that I really like the fact that I just get in the car and go, and that show is now done. I'm now working on the next show. And the goal all the time was to take the lessons from the last show and put it into the next show or the next couple shows. You're trying to figure out how to, and for me, the thing that I get the most juice out of is how do people interact with each other? Like, how do we make this, when I started, I would tell you a lot about how the tech worked, but now mostly I talk about how did everyone feel? How does the audience feel? How do the guests feel? How do the moderators feel? How do people feel when they're there? And did I feel like they were, at their highest potential as far as that goes? And they're never at that highest potential. So you're trying to figure out how you keep on closing that gap from feeling like that was something that was really valuable to them. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, my other favorite moment is when you get a job from a client and I get really excited and the crew is all excited. And then my business partner whispers in my ear, okay, it's ours to lose now. That's my favorite part.
I used to love to get, there were a couple clients that didn't have any phone numbers. And so anytime it said unknown number, I was like, oh, this is going to be a good one. so anyway, next question.
It's from Funsak Dorje from Dharamsala, India. Hi, panelists. Hope you all are keeping well. I'm in a dilemma as to which to buy between a Behringer XR18, Zoom F6, and MixPre 6 for occasional interview panel and live streaming work.
Go, Chris.
It's interesting. You're naming 3 products in 3 different price categories, and they kind of do different things. So it's really, when you're buying, if you're buying a recorder, buy the MixPre. If you're buying a mixer, okay, that's different. When I buy mixers, I tend to worry about outputs more so than inputs. Obviously, I have to have enough inputs, but I'm really more interested in what I'm getting with outputs and routing and internal stuff. We've been talking about MixPre a lot the last couple of weeks. The routing inside of MixPre is amazing. I'm sure the Behringer has similar buses and bears on my. The Zoom F6 is really just a simple recorder. I've had a couple of Zoom F6s. They break a lot, I'll tell you that. We would just go, oh, that one's done, and go get another one, I think at the old office, we had like a drawer of broken Zoom recorders. So think about those things, the outputs, and is it a recorder or a mixer that you really need?
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree. The F6 and the MixPre 6 are really designed as portable recorders to go in a bag. The Behringer is designed to go in a rack or be AC powered. That depends on your budget. Like you said, if you look at the prices, let's look at the prices right now. We got the 1,006 for the sound devices and about $649 for the F6. And I kind of disagree with you a little bit there. I have a F6, never had it broken. It's built like a tank. You can run a car over the top of it, and it would survive. It's out of cast aluminum case. And everything is very well protected on it. It has a lot of the features of the MixPre 6 for half the price. So I think it's fairly well. The preamps aren't quite as good, but if you're not mixing really low-level microphones together, it will work fine for you. So there's that. And it also, the advantage that it does have, and I brought this up embarrassingly yesterday for me, with Paul Isaacs yesterday, the fact that the MixPre series just eats batteries. So if you're doing a lot of portable work, you have to have external batteries powering it because it won't last very long. And the F6 goes all day on a Sony lithium-ion battery that clips on the back, a single one. So you do a lot better there. So it just depends on your operation and what you need. The MixPre 6 at the price that it's at is almost disposable. Like Fenwick said, you get another one out of the drawer if you have a problem with one. Whereas the sound devices goes bad, you got to send it back to the factory or have it worked on, and then you're down $1,000 piece of equipment.
Next
Sorry,
question.
somehow my window got screwed up here.
Back
The
to
only
you, Alex.
I would say
Sorry.
if you do, yeah, sorry, no, I don't know why I did that with my window. Anyway, so I would, if I'm doing mostly shows, I would do an XR18. If I'm doing mostly interview records and I have enough channels with the MixPre, I'd probably use the MixPre 6. But I still think that because of the routing internally in the MixPre 6, if I was going to choose between the F6 and the MixPre 6 and I had the money, I'd probably use the MixPre 6. And if I could stretch, I'd get a MixPre 10. But if I'm doing a lot of shows, the XR18 is going to give you as more I/O. Next question.
And it's a question from me. Just watched the making of The Creator, where they explained why they were used in a small Sony FX3 as a primary camera and how their shooting style influenced the VFX provided by ILM.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, for a while we were saying FX3 for a major motion picture. And I watched the on pay-per-view yesterday, and they had this really cool making of. And the director, Garrett, and I can't recall his last name. Sorry, Garrett.
Gareth Edwards.
Gareth.
It's not Garrett.
Okay,
it's
thank
Gareth
you.
Edwards. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Gareth was explaining why they went with an FX3. He was saying, when you get a movie and you want to get it greenlit, you always have this much left in there for extras and things. So what we decided was, this is how much we were going to spend to shoot the movie, and everything else was for all the contingencies that we didn't plan on. The movie was shot all over Asia. I mean, beautiful locations, and with a very small crew. So they made the determination that the FX3 made a lot of sense because it had to be very portable, had to be pretty darn good visual imaging for them and under different conditions, low light, bright lights, and different exterior locations. They used available light almost everywhere, except in a few places. They've had a carry-around light that they used as a thing. But their comments about the FX3 were it's a pretty darn good-looking camera. You can cut it against the larger, more expensive Sonys if you need to. Has a little bit of grain in it, but they said that's okay because it made the visuals look very filmic. And the folks at ILM commented that they're used to getting plates that they have to do special effects with on big 360 stages with 360 CGI effects, and they didn't do any of that. They just had to superimpose robot heads on people's bodies, and they did it great. It was flawless and well done, but it was an exercise for the folks at ILM getting stuff done. I don't want to use the word on the cheap, but the FX3 did a great job, and the whole approach from Gareth was quite impressive for a major motion picture like that.
Yeah, I have to say I haven't seen the movie yet. I did get to see about 20 minutes of it because of some stuff I was doing, and I will say it looks really good. Like there's something really organic about it. And when I heard that he was shooting with an FX3, I was just like, that sounds crazy. Like FX6, I was kind of like, okay. But, like, why would, and because, again, the camera, but I realized watching how they were using the camera, they were really bringing it down to a smaller footprint. It's not just the camera. It was the whole subsystem around it that was much cheaper and easier to do. But looking at the plates, I would have never known. Like it was, and I think that there is, there's an argument for doing as much practically as you can. I think we get into this thing like, oh, we can just recreate the whole building, the whole city or the whole forest or whatever. And it doesn't actually look the same, and I think that what people are tiring of is, some directors are reacting and saying, well, we're not doing any effects. And that's lying. Like, I just want to call it what it is. It's a bold-faced lie. Of course, they're doing lots of visual effects. They're just spending the time and energy and money on making it right, and doing the reference plates and everything else that they need to. And so it looks more real than it did before, but but I think that it's very, very hard to do. And we don't see it done even on some of the biggest films. I mean, like Marvel has all kinds of problems with physics and, dirt and all kinds of other things that just don't feel like they're there or there correctly. And so I think that, there is something very, very organic about it. And he's integrating these robots. And again, I got to see it about 20 minutes of it. And I was just like, wow, this is, I really want to see it. I just haven't had time to go to the theater. Go ahead, Courtney.
I have seen it in the theater.
What'd you think?
It looks beautiful. I agree with you. ILM did a fantastic job of integrating the visual effects into the location shot footage. And I think they had a fixed amount of budget. And they said, well, where do we want to spend our money? And we want all these beautiful backgrounds. If we have to create them with visual effects, we're going to go over budget. But we can travel with a small crew. That's why they picked this camera, because they can go with a handheld gimbal instead of a techno crane or a Fisher tin dolly and all kinds of image stabilization and building stuff out over the water to push the dolly across. They could just have a guy hand holding a gimbal and walk out into the water. There's a lot of stuff with water, and so that's very difficult to simulate in visual effects realistically. And so I think they saved their money on the production. When you're not having to travel to 6 different countries with a 60-man crew, it saves you a whole lot of money in logistics. Also, it's easier to get into a lot of those countries where they may flinch when you're bringing in 60-person crew into a beautiful tourist spot and you're taking it over for a week or something, where if you can just go in with a 7-person crew and grab that shot and be out in a day. That saves a lot of money, and it lets you shoot in a lot of locations where you couldn't logistically work a deal with those countries to get in there. So I think it came out with a good look. I wish they had spent a little more money on the script.
Oh, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yikes. It was very interesting because it didn't have that super polished look that a Marvel movie would. It looked like somebody shot nice pictures all over the world, and they have superimposed all this stuff, or they manipulated it at ILM. I didn't see targets or people dancing around in tight-fitting lycra targeted outfits to simulate the robots. They just put it on regular people that they met on set. They were extras, essentially. And Courtney, to your point, yes, I saw Ronin jib being regularly used. Most of it, I think, was shot handheld.
Yeah, and that does it, and also the cameras are largely disposable, so you can do a lot of things that are very dangerous with them as well without thinking too much of it. We use crash cams for some of that stuff, but you use some of these cameras as crash cams, but it does, you get more adventurous with them. Next question.
Jack Ruppel from Breckenridge, Colorado, has a question. A Blackmagic design camera app now has 4 channels of mic in the menu. How might I add this to my workflow with ambisonic mics, for example, the Zoom H3 VR?
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm not an expert with ambisonic, but yeah, the software does have 4 channels now. And you can choose from your audio source. I would imagine you can pick any device that you plug in. I don't have the 15. I'm on the only by even numbered iPhones scheduled right now. But I would love to see footage that has an audio input device that can record 4 things into a clip. If somebody wants to send me a clip, I'd love to take a look at it.
Yeah, I should have recorded that last night. Anyway, Courtney?
What you need to do, Fenwick, is get one of those old F6s out of the drawer because it supports ambisonics. It has a USB-C audio output. Plug it into your iPhone and see if it works.
I don't have, again, my iPhone doesn't take that thing. But I would like to clarify something about that. The F6 versus the H6. We did not buy the F6s. We broke a lot of the H6s.
Oh, well, the H6 is a consumer product, and the F6 is more for professional stuff. Yeah.
I just wanted to be
big difference between
clear.
the F series
Words
and
matter.
the H series.
Words matter.
I think that the only thing that I have a, where is it? I have one sitting around. The H, is it? Just a head. Anyway, I have an H6 or the H3 around here. I had one. I was just looking at it because I'm going to do some shooting with it. And the H3 VR, I don't know what the output is of that. Does it actually have 4 outputs? It's designed to record. So the way I'm using it is just to record out. Like I can listen to it binaural while I'm working on it, but it's just supposed to be I'm just using it as a record to the drive. So the question is if you hook it up via USB, do you get it? Does it show up as a device? Now, if you go up to an Ambio, the Sennheiser Ambio, you'll have 4 mics and you'll have 4 outputs. And in that case, you could absolutely use some kind of interface like a mix or like the F6 or the MixPre 6 to get those 4 inputs into it. But I think that it would. But I don't know. I just don't know if there's 4 live outputs from the Zoom H3. I have one. I did get one to do some testing, but I haven't taken it through that pace yet. Next question.
There's a QR code coming at you from Jason in London, UK. Alex mentioned KVM. Which ones are you using?
I'm using what's called a P-Way. I mean, I don't know if it hasn't. And what's funny is it says P-Way on it, but if you go to Amazon, it says something completely different. It's like, and it says you bought this, and I'm like, but I didn't buy it with that name. Let me see if I can find it really quickly here. So yeah, and there's nothing particularly. I don't know. There's nothing particularly great about it. The one thing that I did have to be careful of is to be able to. I got an 8-port one that I wanted to put in, but somehow I can't figure out how to turn off the beeping every time you change the, every time you change it here. So let me see if I can show you this. Let's see. So the one that I have here, and you can see that I've ordered it a couple times, is this is the one that I'm using here. And so this is the little 4-channel. It says P-Way on the top, as you can see, but it says Greeth Tech. KVM switch. So that's, that's pretty much and it'll do video as well. So this will do, you have audio and video. The one thing I was excited about the 8-channel one was that it has an RS-232 on it that I thought I could control, but I haven't been able to actually get it to not make noise, which is a problem. So next question. Oh, sorry, Chris.
And I've mentioned this before, and Alex said, "Yeah, that looks stupid." I use a thing. It's not a KVM switch. It's just a USB switcher, and so it allows me to plug 4 different. I plug my keyboard in. How does this work? You plug your keyboard and mouse into this, and then it has 4 outputs to 4 different computers, and then that little puck, this guy right here. You put that on your desktop, and I can tink, 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 toggle through all the active computers.
And that's all I'm using, and that would work really well. The only thing that stopped me was I don't want to scroll through it. So
yeah,
I paid what I paid for it specifically so that I could push to the one that I want to get to. And it was a couple extra things because I used this during a presentation. And the reason I'm interested in RS-232 is I want to have a better interface for it as it is, and so.
I'll also say that this thing, it's ridiculously loud.
Yeah, and again, the 8-channel one that I bought makes this big noise. Yeah, but that's the noise around it was the issue. I did get one like that, and I was like, oh, I can't use this. So there you go.
What's super confusing is I can switch the actual control, but because of keyboard continuity, I can also swipe my mouse across the computers. And sometimes I get to the edge of the computer, and it's like, I can't get to the next computer, so I have to switch over to it's absurdly ridiculous.
The continuity stuff, I kept on getting I have so many computers that I just get lost. Like, I don't know where my mouse is. Like, it's somewhere. So I turned continuity off because because I have monitors that are not always visible to me, because they're in my switcher as well. And so I was like, my mouse would get into some place that I couldn't find it. So I was like, I need to not use that. That's just because I've got like 5 large monitors around the front, but I've got 9 monitors plugged in. And so it can just get into a place that's not in front of me right now. So it's a very, very weird. It's
confusing.
Thing. But yeah, the P-Way or Greeth Tech is the one that I use, and it's capable of 4K 60. I kind of like the idea that I could put video into it, but I don't. Next question.
It's another QR code question coming to us from Jens Olson in Sagal, Idaho. How complete of an office hour setup can you create with the new iPhone 15?
I'm working on that actually to test it, to figure out what could we send out to someone. One of the things that I started testing, it was actually a suggestion from somebody.
Your Sony autofocus is
this
freaking
week
out.
on Spelunking with Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, exactly. I was waiting for Chris to talk while I was doing it.
You've done more of this. Hold on, I got this over here on this show than a long time.
I know. Well,
okay, it's down here. This is what I'm looking for. I got my wire strippers right here.
Yeah. So this is the new test. Someone had suggested this, and now I can't find the name on it because I don't have the box. But this is the new little headset.
Oh yeah, where you use the in-ear mold.
So this is in-ear mold, this in-ear thing here, but there's a little boom on it, and then I have that going out to a. It goes into 2. One is headphone, one is mic, and now what I did is it's got its own little adapter this goes into the TRRS here, and but I'm using the USB one, which is a little bit clearer. This is Audio Technica Rode. I'm sorry, Rode makes this one that's a little. Let's see if I can get that to focus. Yeah, that Rode one is this little converter here. It's like, I don't know, $20 or something like that. Anyway, so I'm using this as a conversion. The mic it's the best one we've plugged into a outside of like using a MixPre or something. It's the best one we plugged into a phone. Anyway, so this is working pretty well. It's really sensitive. Here's the problem: is I can use this because I know what I'm doing. I don't know if I could send it out to a client because the mic is really sensitive to scratching. You know, if you hit it, it'll hear it. So you'd have to know what you're doing to wear it. So that, along with a little light, and you could theoretically, I don't know if I could do office hours with it, but we'll try. I mean, I'll try to do it at some point, maybe in an after hours, and we'll see if we like it. But I think that as far as a low kit, this mic was suggested a while ago, and I can probably find the name of it. But I think that for a remote kit, I think it's the best one that I've seen so far. This is the Kumura, and I can't remember. Somebody, thank you to whoever suggested it. But this was this is what I'm using here. This is the Alteon Audio Kumura Duo in-ear headset. So it only shows one ear, but it's actually both ears. I don't know why it keeps on showing just one ear. Like, it treats it like it's one ear, but you can see here it's two ears. The only problem with it is it is a little funky because they designed it exactly the way you see it here in this image, which is they designed it to be across the front, and it really works better across the back. Or you don't want it across the front. That's silly. So so it's a little bit cumbersome to put it behind you because it's just not built that way. But it does work. I got this based on a question here in the show. And it works, really well. It would be a totally acceptable mic for this kind of thing. So as I build I am curious about building a very, very light Rode kit that I can use. And this would be part of that Rode kit right now, based on my experience so far. Let's go to the next question.
TJ Worrell from Minneapolis asking, moving to a 3-story house without internet internal network wiring, short term, should I install a Mesh Wi-Fi, PowerLine Mesh, or a PowerLine Ethernet? Best versus cost effective. Long term will be plenum rated fiber through the cold air returns.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, for short term, what I would do is get you a nice sturdy Cat 6 Ethernet cable, run it out the window of the 3rd story, drop it down to the 1st story, put one access point with a nice Wi-Fi 6 like a Netgear Nighthawk, and put it kind of up in the top of a closet somewhere on the bottom floor, and then on the top, get your last year's router, the one that you displaced to put the new Nighthawk in, and make that a second access point with a different SSID on the top floor, and the middle floor can be covered by either one or the other. That's how I handle it, and I have Ethernet connection between the two, and it works pretty well. If I'm upstairs, I'll use the upstairs SSD, and if I'm downstairs, I'll use the downstairs SSD. In the middle, I can use either. So that would be a good short-term solution for you. Probably wouldn't cost you much more than the price of that Ethernet cable you're going to run outside the window down to the bottom floor, and it may look ugly for a month or two until you get your regular network installed. But you could paint it, make it blend in with the outside of the house.
I have a mesh network. It's a disaster. It's just I haven't gotten around to building it. The mesh, it's horrible. So don't do mesh networks. The latency is really bad, and especially if you're doing anything like WebRTC. So anything like Zoom or anything else like that, it's just not good. Not good. So I would probably do what I'm still working on getting install for where my wife sits for hers because we kept on resisting that she's going to stay there, but it's now been 2 years. We might want to put an Ethernet board there, but we run an Ethernet cable from my office to where she is when she does shows because the mesh network is not usable. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm using in addition to what I have my wired Ethernet because I've put wires everywhere on 2 floors, by the way, an Orbit Netgear mesh network, and it's
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, good, Courtney.
Yeah, and as far as Powerline Ethernet goes, I've tried that in the past and have had horrible luck with it. Of course, in my house, I've got a lot of Internet of Things and a lot of electronic devices and power supplies that aren't great, that spew all kinds of trash that goes into the AC lines, and so Powerline Ethernet competes with all that noise, and so I've found that to be not very good either, and not very fast. It's definitely slower.
Good, Chris.
This has nothing to do with all the electronics, TJ, but I'm going to tell you this. Courtney mentioned you could paint the cable and make it look better. Take a sample of your paint at Home Depot. They can match stuff like crazy. I had to do it for my siding, which is a really old paint job. It's unbelievable what they do. They do some stuff and it's incredible. Matching paint colors digitally. Wow.
Next question.
And it's another QR code from my very, very good friend Joe Phillips in Murphy, North Carolina. If one was to spread holiday cheer to someone else, where would one find the best bundle of a MixPre 3 and Noise Assist?
I mean, I think that there's a couple places that you can buy it, whether it's Gotham Sound or True Audio or on Location Sound in LA. They probably all could give you a bundle. Those are the big three that I would probably call to do it. That are basically, they're more service oriented. They're not just straight retailers. So there's other great ones like Full Compass and Sweetwater and B&H. I don't think those would do the bundles for you and set it all up for you and send it to you. But yeah, and it's dangerous to say on the show. We're probably going to offload a couple just because we have so many. So you should contact me as well, because we're probably going to get rid of a couple of them from what I know. So yeah, reach out to me and we'll see what we can do.
Alex Lindsay's Black Friday sale this Friday.
Exactly. Well, we've got 11 of them, and we haven't had more than 5 or 6 out at a time since we got them. So we were kind of like, well, maybe we sell a couple of them. So anyway, so let us know. We've got them all bundled together. Next question.
Talalik Lopez Waterman in Pittsburgh, PA has a question. Has anyone used Nomad Air as a solution for internet in rural areas?
Nomad Internet. Now, I guess the question is, what does Nomad, what does that mean?
I think I looked at that before. It's a point-to-point microwave connection, I think.
Unlimited data. I can't... It says that it's doing really well. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out whether it's a satellite or whether it's cellular. I can't quite. I'm just wondering whether it's bonded cellular. Is the question? It says, because when it says like unlimited nationwide data, I kind of feel like there's Tlaloc, I would love to have you do some testing with that. and if you're in a bind, if you're in a bind and you need wireless, I've got a Starlink that's only probably 30 miles from where you are right now. so it's not being used. So anyway, so you can let me know about that too. See, I'm a full service provider today. You just call me and I'll set you up. Anyway, yeah. And if you've got questions, of course, you can ask them anytime throughout the first or second hour. This is a 2-hour or up to 2-hour Q&A session. So you can go in and you can use askofficehours.global 24/7. We got like 7 or 8 questions today that just came in from the QR code. So every day we're getting more of them. And but if you want to use that, you can use that any time of the day. That just comes to your head that you have a question or comment, askofficehours.global. You can throw it in there and then we'll feed it into the system. Or if you're in Makana, of course, ask those questions and make sure to vote on the questions so we know which ones to answer next. Next question.
And here's another one of those aforementioned QR codes coming from Wes Decker in Fort Worth, Texas. I ran across Apple's preliminary documentation for how they're using HEVC to record and playback spatial video to iOS 17.2 and VisionOS, and thought it would be helpful to share this link.
Yeah, this is a great link. I'm sure it'll go into the chat. This is under the developer.apple.com. It's /AV Foundation /HEVC stereo video profile.pdf. So that's what you want to look for, but we'll put it in the chat that's there. Also look at the, about the same time, Apple put out, all the WWDC, and they have some videos about it as well, which are actually pretty good. So I would watch the videos and read this document. Next question.
Jack Cannon from Phoenix, Arizona, building a kit for a podcast that travels on a university lean budget, video and audio. Where would you spend your money?
I would spend it on the recorder and the mics. like that's like if you're really thinking about a podcast, video and audio, the first place that I would do it is I'd have a recorder. I'd look at how many, getting something like an F6 or a MixPre 6 are probably, those are the two things that I would look at first, then the mics. What's really, if you're, it depends on like where you're going. Can you set those mics down? Do people need to hold them? If they need to hold them, the ones that we've really leaned into and the least expensive, most durable ones, of course, are the SM58s. So, I've definitely gone out with a pack of, 6 SM58s and back when I was doing a lot of podcasting, I mean, I know this will sound like overkill, but we didn't have all these other ones available. But I had a 788 with a bunch of SM58s that were all in a little box. I could just pull them out and do a podcast. And so I think that. Nowadays, of course, there's more cost-effective ways to do that, but the SM58s are pretty surefire as far as just having something that you can use, and it sounds like you're on the road, so that might be the most useful as far as doing that. If you have the ability to, have mic stands and you're going to sit around tables and so on and so forth, I will say that the PR40s have better headroom, for those. Another thing you could do, of course, is living a little bit more on the edge, but definitely doable, is potentially doing something with a laptop and a bunch of MV7s and so on and so forth. The reason we get MV7s is because we have USB in them and XLR. But if you commit to XLR and you know that you're going to go into a recorder, you can get better mics. So the PR40 again is one that we've used a lot for that. Just make sure to get there's a little windscreen that you can buy from BSW. I don't think Heil makes it, but BSW makes it, that goes on the end. That is really important for those PR40s. And then I think that the next thing I would do, obviously, if you're going to get is get cameras. One of the things that I have experimented with fairly successfully for these is to use those little link cameras. They're tiny. You can put them on little light stands or little arms, and they're PTZs, and so you can kind of frame everybody up, and you can fit a bunch of them in your backpack. So, I mean, what I'm talking about right there with a bunch of SM58s, a recorder like a MixPre 6 or an F6, the links, those are all going to fit. Like everything I'm talking about, even with a laptop, is going to fit into a 1510. It's going to be, it's really like a little podcast kit that would get you a pretty good show, I'd say. So those would be the things I think about. Next question.
From Jack Ruppel in Breckenridge, Colorado. John Preto's been up to anything interesting? What interests you today or this week?
Mr. Preto?
No, I've been out of the loop. I'm having some health issues here that I'm battling, and so I've been completely out of the loop here. I'm watching really closely what's going on with OpenAI and their Chat GPTs. There's some really interesting things that's going on in that regard, and so I'm watching the AI world. That's my primary focus.
Are you watching what? I didn't quite grok what was going on with Copilot with Microsoft. It's really letting you build kind of codeless custom Chat GPTs. I only read it kind of going by. Did you see anything about that, John?
I didn't see anything specific to Copilot that's not already integrated into GitHub for a fee, which is super, super popular. It's one of their most popular applications. GPTs is their new application that they announced last week, right? So creating your own GPTs based upon your own corpus of data. In fact, Leo Laporte on This Week in Google did a really good overview of GPTs with that group of people. I've never watched that show before. It came on like 2 a.m. I watched it. It was pretty good. So I suggest you go watch that episode.
Next question.
Brian from Washington, D.C. Submits this QR code question. Is it possible, preferable even, advisable for a federal government agency to have its YouTube channel whitelisted to avoid music copyright strikes during a live stream?
Go ahead, Courtney.
That's a touchy situation because usually .gov websites are in public domain because it's by the government, so they're not copyrighted. And if they were to use copyrighted music on that .gov live stream, or gov public domain, they'd be in trouble probably with the copyright holders. So I think they would probably shy away from even using any copyrighted material as music. They would have to use some type of open source or license-free music to back their .gov websites and live streams.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, the music service I use, they want to know what's your YouTube account number so that they can, fix any complaints that might come in or hits or strikes. But so far, I haven't had any problems with a job I just recently did. So I don't know where you put that. If they give you a code, do you put that in the description category?
No, you don't need to put it anywhere. They have to go back into your CM. They have a CMS that they go back into, and then they identify either your channel or they identify your the video that's going to be there to say this is okay to play this content to here. But that's a control system that they have on their end. You don't have to do anything on your end other than they have to know where to go. For that kind of stuff, it's a process, and usually the way government agencies do this is they have a private partner that is going to do the work, do the legwork of that, because getting the contracts through the government agency is so onerous oftentimes that it'll take too long to get through that side of it. I mean, that's been my experience so far. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I haven't done this in a while, and I did it yesterday for a client. And you can use YouTube Studio to submit your video, and as it compiles and checks it for a copyright strike, and it says copyright is A-OK. Can they come back later and say, well, all of a sudden it isn't?
No, it's not. I mean, you can always test. You can take a video and play it out, and it'll say it's okay. A lot of times it'll say, hey, you're going to get a copyright flag. If you're not monetizing, most of the government is not monetizing it. If you're not monetizing it, the flag doesn't matter. So you just kind of go, sure. You can flag me all you want. What you're looking for is trying to avoid a strike. You don't want a copyright strike because you get 3 of them. I mean, I haven't done it recently, but what it used to be is if you get 3 of them within 6 months, you will lose the ability to live stream or post, I think. So it's important for you to not do that. And again, I think that usually we've worked with, often, sometimes I've been the company that a government agency worked with to do this. And so we go out and get, work through those things through a partner as opposed to the agency itself trying to figure it out. But it can be done. But 99% of the time, if we're streaming to something that's a government agency, we are not using copyrighted material. Like we really try to avoid that, like the plague. In YouTube, it's just every time I'm going to put some copyrighted material into my show. It's just so much work, and I don't know if there's ROI there. Next question.
Jack Ruppel from Breckenridge, Colorado is back. What is going on with the drone regulation and the FAA? How might regulation influence drone buying choices?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, because if you buy a drone that weighs more than 250 grams, I think it is, you have to register it, and it has to have, as of September of this year, there's something called remote ID that the drones have to be equipped with that broadcast the owner's name and the drone ID number, looking like a digital, kind of like a transmitted license plate, so that the FAA can monitor when they find a drone flying in an unsafe manner. Anyone can receive that remote ID and turn them in to the FAA, and they can then pursue the owner and or ground your drone or prevent you from flying anymore. So you got to be careful about that. And I think this is required of all drones over that weight limit. So look into, if you're buying a drone that weighs more than that, make sure it's equipped with remote ID. Otherwise, you may not be able to fly it these days over any This also makes a difference if you want to fly over populated areas with people in it. You have to have a drone with remote ID on it now. So that's all I know about it.
There's this thing going on in Ukraine. You may have noticed in the news. Expect the regulations to get much tighter because of that. Because it's just, there's this giant, truly an arms race of weaponizing drones. And weaponizing drones means that all drones become more dangerous, because a lot of what you're seeing in Ukraine is taking commercially available drones, DJIs, and, putting bombs on them, and we all talked about that and worried about that a little bit as it got going. Like eventually this is a great delivery system, and they've turned it into a great delivery system. And so you can expect it to be, get more and more tight for drones. I think that, I think that if you go through all the hoops, you'll still be able to fly it. People get licenses to fly planes. And so I think that that'll continue to happen, but it is going to be the wild, wild west days of drone ownership is probably over. Next question.
Next one from Chris. It's a QR code. Chris is from Washington, by the way. Recommendations for a mic to capture children singing in a room where space is limited and would have to be placed about 12 feet away. And there's a link to the location.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm thinking a Sennheiser 416 pointed at them on a boom. Going to get a little bit of that side mount sound problems that you're going to get with room tone.
Yeah, if you look at the video, though, it's a pretty wide group of kids. Like it is. I think it would be hard to have something that directional. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I didn't look at the picture, but if the kids are in a semicircle or something, then a directional mic like a 416 might be a problem for you. And if they're in a circle, definitely will be a problem for you. So you might go with an omnidirectional microphone or at least a cardioid microphone and point it in the direction of the kids. I would try and get it equidistant from as many kids as you can. So if you put it overhead, try and mount it in such a fashion that however the kids are distributed, you're equidistant from the furthest that are away from the microphones.
Yeah, now Mickey suggests a Sheps CMC 641, and Robert Linkram suggests a PCC 160 from Crown. So those are some other suggestions there from the from our remote panel in there. So those are some other options to think about there. Next question.
Michael Ball from San Francisco, California is asking, I want to auto-trigger record on my MixPre 3 at the time as my ATEM camera, etc. What might work? Is there a way to send timecode out of an ATEM ME2 to the micro HDMI on the MixPre? I'm not ready to buy a timecode generator.
Is there a micro HDMI in on the MixPre? Is there a micro HDMI on a MixPre that I didn't know about?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's for programming, from what I've seen.
They're not an HDMI, micro HDMI. No, there's a micro USB. There's a USB-C.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. No, there's a micro time code in. So there is a micro. So there's a new thing that we had a whole MixPre show, and I didn't get that in there. So there is there's an HDMI. If you look on the second side of this, let's see if I can hide. This is the problem with this autofocus, is it really wants to focus my face. Can't do it. It's just like, no, I'm not going to do it. So anyway, so it's there. That's the way. I don't know whether that will take the signal from the ATEM and know what to do with that. But it is the micro. The only reason that micro HDMI exists is to do time code in. So. And to get the HDMI flag, and we looked at it yesterday. There is an HDMI flag that goes out on the HDMI. I just haven't tried to do it with the ATEM and whether that would actually work. So I don't know if it works with the ATEM. I do know it would work with a camera. Go ahead, Courtney. Can't hear you, Courtney.
Sorry. Sometimes the mouse button works. I think the auto roll on the auto roll on the MixPres has to do with seeing moving time code. So the ATEM's always putting out continuous running time code, so it'd be always rolling. It's designed to detect, if you have several of these hooked together, you could have a time code source like a camera. So whenever the camera rolls, it generates time code, and it auto rolls all the recorders at the same time. So it's looking for changing time code to trigger the records. Since the ATEM, I don't think, is going to do start-stop time code output. I think it's just going to do continuous time code out.
Next question.
David Brady in New York with a question. Building out a new AV production rack based around a 40 by 40 router. How should it be wired up? Should there be a normalized patch panel behind it? If so, are there any in multiples of 10, or should I simply home run the last 8? Canare 32 MD ST 2 by 32.
So I use non-normal, so I know that sounds nutty, but there's normal, but I use non-normal. So the difference between these and the patch panels, a patch panel is something that you sit on the back, and you can patch stuff in. And the way a normal works is it has a signal going through it. If you punch into it, it will take over that signal. So this is. The reason you do this is to extend the scalability of your router. So you may have a router that's 40 by 40, but you may put a patch panel on the back that has a ton of I/O, so you can plug a bunch of things in and you repatch it on the back so that you can. And you see these in trucks all the time, and we have them in our racks, and so that way you can hard. And the other advantage of that is you can for some reason the router goes down, you can hard patch oftentimes around it to get to things. So there's a bunch of advantages to having patch panels. You don't think it. I didn't know what to do with patch panels when I first found out about them, and now I feel like every major production should have one. That's not one that you come in, not a remote production that you walk in, but every one that, if you're building a control room, you need to have a patch panel. I prefer Bittree non-normal 12Gs. So those are, they have pins, and you get loops for each one of those. And the reason for that is, and it just depends on what your use case is. I don't ever want to pull something out of a patch panel and have another video. Like if I pull something out of the patch panel, I want no video coming out of that. So that's my, and I know that takes, what I'm creating is extra work, but man, I've had some bad experiences with that. And I know that I'm doing it in a very, very odd way. So I know that I'm not normal for doing it that way. But I like when we have broadcasts, we've done really large broadcasts, and we'll have all the outputs to the truck and the switch and a bunch of other things all at the end, and they're all these red little pins. They're little loops, these red loops that are there. And when I pull those loops out, it means no signals leaving the building. So we can do rehearsal, pull all those pins out, and I don't have to worry about it. But that's why I do it. Is I don't want it to be accidental. I don't want to have anybody accidentally do stuff there. That's the issue. And again, most people use normal ones. I've had situations where people lose jobs because they pulled the pin out of a normal panel. So anyway, next question.
Funsak Dorji from Dharamsala, India, asking, hi panelists, can you recommend a USB device that outputs 4 HDMI displays for my H2R Graphics machine, Windows? Thanks.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, yeah, there you can go. Normally, Windows only supports, the Intel chipset more accurately, with its onboard graphics only supports 3 HDMI outputs. However, you can go with virtual output over the USB and these pluggables, which are available using the pluggable driver, which converts USB-C or USB-A to multiple, usually 2 HDMI outputs. You can get those for about $40. You could plug that into your USB-C or USB-A connector and add 2 to your existing 2 that are probably out on your, depending upon what your graphics machine is. Or you could get one of these that has this is a little micro GR9. I think you can find them online in China and on Amazon that are certainly fast enough. This one comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM built in and NVMe, a tiny NVMe drive that can go up to a terabyte. And it has 2 HDMI. It has 3 HDMI outputs. Then you could plug the pluggable into a USB adapter and add 2 more. Also has 2 gigabit Ethernet ports and is tiny and costs about $179. So that's a budget way to get multiple outputs to do H2R graphics, which are not really processor intensive. It should run fine.
And the you might, because you said your graphics machine instead of a graphics laptop, there's a chance that you may be using an actual machine that's there that may have cards. You can put in things like a NVIDIA Quadra M2000 card into it, and you get 4 display ports out. Then you just get adapters or display port to HDMI out from there. So you can add cards. If your machine is not a laptop, you could put a card in that would do 4 outs, and that might be more stable. Next question.
Danny Grizzle from Longview, Texas. What is After Hours and where is it located? Office Hours is like a Myst world and needs a map.
It doesn't, we like making it a little hard. So anyway, it's an adventure. After Hours is something. If you are getting our email, you'll see a link near the bottom that is a link to joining After Hours. It's another Zoom. It runs 24/7, and people, a lot of times you'll go in there and there's a whole bunch of just names and you won't hear anything. But if you start asking questions, oftentimes people will turn their cameras on and start talking. And so it's just a place that we can do what we're doing here 24/7 in a little bit more of an informal way. And so it started off as like a pre-show and post-show, and then it became just 24/7 After Hours. And so it's there. You can, if you don't get our email, you can go to officehours.global/join, and you can sign up for the email, and you'll get an email that tells you what's going on every day. But it'll tell you how to join Discord, which is another place you might want to be. It'll also show you how to join After Hours, where you can sit and chat with other folks any time of the day. Go ahead, Mitchell.
It truly is a magical place, Danny. I had a client who was doing an edit, and I couldn't figure out how to do something. And I said, hold on just a second. I went over, logged into After Hours, and I said, hey, I can't do this. And 2 people popped in, said, oh, do this, this, and this. And the client turned to me and said, who are those guys? So if you want to be one of those guys, Alex, just explain how to get there.
It truly is the ultimate open office, because the problem with open office is that there's people around you all the time. The advantage of open office is there's people around you all the time. So what After Hours oftentimes is there's people around, and you can go in and hang out with them a little bit around the water cooler, ask questions, brainstorm. But you can turn it off anytime you want. You can turn off your video and just listen to them. You can turn off everything and not listen to them and not be there and be able to focus on what you're doing. So it has all the advantages of the open office, but without some of the disadvantages by being virtual. So it's pretty fun. Next question.
Next one in from Talalik Lopez Waterman in Pittsburgh, PA. John, can you give us a quick Garage Rocketeers update?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had our one of 2 big launches here last month, October. And I met a couple of good guys out there. We lost one of our sponsors. We still have the other one there. So we have parts sitting on a shelf right now, but I found a guy that will actually make us a motor and save us about $15,000 in cost. So that was the big breakthrough on that. So that was a huge win for us. And so the rocket continues. It's the Nova payloader. It's the Estes 1961 Nova payloader, 12x upscale. Right now it's scheduled for October, and we do have mission patches available as well. So we'll put those up on the website here within the next couple months or so.
Now, is there a launch? They're not doing any kind of launches in March. Isn't the big one in March that's in Vegas?
March and October are similar size.
Oh, got it. And they're both in the same place in the desert?
Exactly the same place.
Very
and we had about 150 people out there in October. It was nice. The weather was great. We had several big launches out there. It was a good time.
Yeah. And when is it in March?
Mid-March. So it's usually around the 17th, 18th, right in there.
Got it. It'd be fun to go. I think it'd be fun to go shoot and just see, because I haven't been there. Not so much for yours, just to kind of get a sense of it, and then come back in October and do something.
Mid-March.
Yeah. Okay. We'll think about that. Next question.
And another question coming in on our QR code network. Abe Barrera from Flowery Branch. What's your opinion on Twit TV regarding Leo? Talking about how Twit isn't getting enough advertising money, and will Twit be able to continue for long, or will they have to change the way they work?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I don't like it. He's tried to do this before. A couple of years ago, he had some serious problems with stalkers, and he decided, Leo decided to take all the live stuff off the air and just tape the stuff and then post it on YouTube. But then he quickly realized there was such an influx of people that were dissatisfied with this because of the chat room, the live chat room that he would have up on each show, participates in each show, and the only way to do that is over a live broadcast. And you lose that community completely, cut them off completely. And there was such an uproar about it, they had to go back to live broadcasts again very quickly. I think it lasted only a few days. This time, I don't know what the purpose is. I guess to earn more money. Maybe he should take one less vacation a year. He does tend to take a large number of vacations. But I think you can, I discovered you can watch the live stream kind of on YouTube when the show is being made, but it's not on live.twit.tv. It's not on their network. It is on their YouTube channel. And so you can watch it live if you want to without paying the $7 a month, which is their particular streaming option. I mean, their subscription option for members of their Discord channel. But a point of the Discord channel of paying that $7 is to get the shows without commercials in them. So I don't know how moving to that model will get them, if they'll make enough money, make up enough money off the additional subscriptions to cover the amount of advertising that they will no longer be able to get because they're not exposed to as many viewers by not having that live stream.
Yeah, I mean the number of viewers versus the number of I mean I don't know what I can and can't say about the numbers, but the number of live viewers is about 1,000th the number of downloads. So it's somewhere between 1,000th and 1/500th of the number. So the number is a pretty small number of people who are watching the live version, but it does add energy, and they do create a lot of they're vocal. So I think that's why they have a lot of attention paid to them there. Club Twit has a lot of other things. They're having extra interviews and extra shows, and they do a lot of work. So it's not, if all you're trying to do is get no commercials, it's probably still worth it. I mean, I don't, to not listen to commercials, but there's other features that they're focusing more and more on those other features that are for Club Twit, because the advertising market's really difficult, right now for a lot of podcasters, not just for Twit. So, I think that, it'll be interesting to see. I think that Twit could do a lot of what we're doing, what we figured out how to do relatively effectively. In fact, I probably ought to send Leo the design for what we're doing here. So, because he doesn't need a big office to do what we're doing. And I don't know if it would change that dramatically. He'd still have people doing all of those things, but he might not have the overhead. I mean, the problem is they've got a longer lease, I think. Anyway, go ahead, Courtney.
And one thing you may not realize is if you're watching on YouTube, I for years have a YouTube viewer that skips over the commercials automatically, and so
aren't they reaching out to you? I think YouTube is working on closing that gap.
Well, you can't load you won't find those apps on the Google Store or on the iPhone Store. You have to sideload them, and so they're trying to shut down sideloading as best they can. And I think Fire TV has moved. Right now, those apps run on Fire TV and Google TV by sideloading. Amazon is changing their operating system to avoid sideloading, so we'll see what happens there. But you can do that, and so I don't know. It depends on how many people are watching on those types of things on YouTube that wouldn't need to pay for the extra material you get on their Twit network, their pay-per-view.
Next question.
And it's a question coming in from London, UK, from David. David asks, could you suggest a portable TV monitor suitable for on-location events and conferences to use with an Atem Extreme ISO?
It just depends on what the question really for on location portable TV monitor. I guess the question is, are you for the Atem, you just need any kind of computer monitor. And what I tend to use are these Dell 24-inch ones. I attach those. I usually have two of them, and I attach them to are you using Extreme? Let's see. Yeah, Extreme ISO. So what I would take there is Amazon Basics makes these two arms. They're about $250. It's a two-arm system that attaches to your table. And so you attach it to the table. You have the two arms. You put two 24-inch monitors up there. You can swing them around wherever you want them. And that works pretty well. And you get the two HDMI outputs from there. If you're streaming, if you do need to use that HDMI for something else, you might need it to run it into some kind of distro or and this is where you might use a 4x4 matrix or a 8x8 matrix. I have an 8x8 matrix right in front of me here that I use to reroute monitors a lot, and that's a Blackbird makes it. It's Monoprice makes Blackbird, and so anyway, so those are things that you might want to think about there. Go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry, I was doing a little unboxing.
There you go. We're very informal today. Yeah, I missed the top of the hour transition. I realized, I looked up, I was like, what happened to the top of the hour transition? It must have happened while I was not paying. I was ready for it, and then got into an answer and forgot about it. Go ahead, Courtney.
I'd tell you the name of this, but it comes in a box that says portable monitor. Yeah, it's Chinese. These are about, and these are actually pretty good. They're IPS 15-inch monitors. This was a, sorry, I'm blocking my microphone, a Hongo. Yes, Hongo. There it is. A 15-inch IPS monitor. It has a mini HDMI in and a USB-C in, and it can receive video over USB-C, but I use one just like this for the output of my Atem. With HDMI in, has a micro HDMI in, or mini HDMI in, so you just get a mini HDMI to full-size HDMI cable and plug it right in, and then a USB-C power supply, which it comes with a little wall wart power supply to plug it into power. And it's portable. It folds flat, has a nice little cover that works as a stand, and they're about $125 to $150, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Next question.
Next one in is a QR code from Jerry Forschler from Harrisonville, Missouri. I rarely miss office hours while making home deliveries. I don't like to mix brands of PTZ cameras. I use 3 BirdDog Eyes P200s with PTZOptics SuperJoy Joystick Controller to stream football and baseball and experience mixing brands.
Yeah, the real problem with mixing brands is you're mixing color science. And so the challenge you're going to have, I mean, some of it's going to be a little bit of the interface, but the interface might be able to use Visca and control many different PTZs on its own. But the real challenge that you dig yourself into is that the color of each one of these is slightly different, and the way that they manage color is slightly different. And so it's very hard to match color on these cameras if you use multiple, and sometimes even multiple models. And then also multiple lenses, lens types. So if you use a 24-70 on one and a 100-400 on another, you're actually going to there's going to be different versions of blue that are added to that based on the filtering and the lenses in general. So, but you really start to get into that problem if you start mixing and matching a BirdDog with a Sony, with a Panasonic, now if you really dig into those. I don't know who. I think Sony makes the BirdDog chips. I'm not 100% sure, but you can get into like who makes the chip for that camera, and you may be able to get a little closer. The best way to handle this is you take the one with the least amount of control. This is the first way to handle it is you take the whatever PTZ is, you have the least amount of control over color. You get that one the way you like it, and then the ones that have better controls go after that and have to match that. You basically have to go to the lowest common denominator. The other way to do it that's far more refined but does take a lot more work is to get little LUT boxes. And so you can have there's boxes that Blackmagic makes for $100 or something like that that just happen to have a LUT. You can load a LUT into the box, and I can't remember which ones do it and which ones don't now. It's not something that they don't call it a LUT box. AJA makes a more expensive one called a color box, which is a really high-end version of this. But you can add LUTs, I think 33-point LUTs to these little boxes. And so what you can do is then take the cameras, you shoot a chart, you take them you take that chart into Resolve, you take the first camera or the second camera and you put it over top of the first one, you set that top layer to difference, and you'll see what the difference is between the two of them. You tweak all of that and you load a LUT and you put that LUT into the box. But you have to make sure that the box matches the camera, and it's a little bit of a work, but you can get them to be very, very close that way. They're not going to be perfect, but that's the way to do it. And that's going to take you a couple days. Like just to be clear, it's going to take you a couple days to get it done. Once it's done, they should just match up. But we've done that we've generally done that only to incorporate non-Blackmagic cameras with a Blackmagic pipeline, where we need to match our cameras back in. So we haven't done it with all the cameras, but we've done it with one or two here and there, and putting those LUTs in, and it's worked pretty well. Next question.
Chester Sweeney from Las Vegas, Nevada drops a QR code question. If I did 3D print new frames for my glasses that I used to read, how can I measure lens to frame for perfect fit?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I don't know why you'd want to do this because, reading glasses you can get like my wonderful ones here that I paid, all of about $4 for, come with frames, and why you would want to 3D print some frames. The problem with lenses is every one is shaped slightly differently. They're the same on left and right eye, but they're opposite shape of each other. So you'd have to take that into account. Maybe there's a way you could scan it in, but it'd be a lot more trouble than it's worth. I'm not sure why you would want to print 3D frames instead of using the frames that come with most glasses. I don't know glasses that come without frames other than
I think he's got big
monocles.
plans. I think he's got big plans. He's got big plans for
3D display.
I mean, if you're going to do normal ones, if you're just trying to replace the ones you already have, I wouldn't do that because frames are so inexpensive that you just buy new ones. It's not worth the work. If you're going to do something crazy and you just want it to fit into the same lenses, what you can do is take the lenses out of the camera, cover them with something that you can wipe off. So a dust, you can get these little things that you can put dust on them. You can put other things. Then you can actually, if you put them on a graphed paper, obviously I had to do this once. You put them on a piece of paper that has a known set of squares. So the squares can be 1 centimeter or whatever it is. And then you take a lot of photos of them, and you can build photogrammetry that will help you build that, remodel that lens. You can model it based on the photogrammetry, and you can scale it based on those reference points. And a lot of times we'll set a measuring stick down next to it, so we really get down to the millimeter of knowing what that is. Once you have that 3D model of your lens, you can now build your 3D model, the 3D model you're going to print around that lens. It may not be perfect, but we've definitely done it where we've had to match things up with pieces. And I didn't try to read through them, but for prop, they worked fine. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I don't know if the photogrammetry is going to work since most lenses are obviously curved. So
that's actually why you want to use. That's why you want to use the photogrammetry.
Sit flat onto that graph paper, so I don't know how accurate that would be. But.
It is because a lot of it there's points of it that are sitting flat against it. You don't if you do it on the
so you're taking
side.
multiple photographs from different angles to do your photogrammetry.
Yeah, I mean, like for that one, not hundreds, but for the one that we did there, it's probably 80 or 90 photos. To build it. And the key was there was this spray on that it wasn't dust, but it was like a spray on that we could wipe off. Like it created a film. The reason you have to do that is you have to get rid of the reflections on the glass. That screws up the photogrammetry. So you need a flat piece. And what's interesting is you don't want it to be perfectly smooth. You want it to be kind of textured because that's what the photogrammetry uses to grab it. The other way to do that is also, if you're using Metashape, you can put there's little codes that you can print out and you put them on there, and that helps. You can actually register the cameras based on what are kind of like QR codes that are around it, so that you don't have to. You can register those cameras, and so you don't have to use the lens itself to register them. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, just to be clear, we're not talking about camera lenses. We're talking about eyeglasses. So don't go monkey with your lenses.
Can't do this with the lenses. And again, we did it as a prop. We did not do it I didn't try to read with them. I don't know if it has that level of accuracy. Next question.
And it's from David Brady in New York, New York. To Alex's point of stray mouse pointers, are there any mouse managers, Windows or Mac, that can be used in conjunction with Synergy and companion Vicreo to snap the mouse pointer to the appropriate default monitor?
That's a really good idea. I don't know if they do it or not. I did use Synergy for a while. It destroyed one of my computers. so I like Synergy. Like what happened was I got a hard drive and somehow got it between two computers, and I didn't even know I was grabbing the hard drive. It was like accidental click on it, and it got between two computers and it just thumped. I mean, I had to grind one of my computers down to the ground, and I still don't even think it works as well as it did before. Like it really caused a lot of damage, and so I haven't put it back on. So I don't know. Go ahead, Courtney.
I'm not sure what he means by snap the pointer to
I think
the
what he means is that
monitor. Set focus to whatever monitor you're over the top of.
If you lose your mouse somewhere, you've got a whole bunch of monitors and you've got your mouse somewhere, to be able to hit a button and have it come right back to the middle of the one that you've defined. Like this is when I say hit this button, I want the mouse to come back to here. And I don't know of anything that does that.
There is under accessibility, there is a thing you can turn on for your mouse pointer that when you hit the button, it will make a little concentric circles around it to make it obvious where it is. And
my
reveal it if it's buried underneath something, but it shouldn't be ever buried underneath anything.
My problem is it could be buried in a monitor that I don't see. Like, because I have monitors that are not visible at that moment. That's the issue that I have.
There are programming things. I have it in some of my programs that move the mouse. That you can tell it to move the mouse to a certain screen and a certain position on that screen. So it can be done programmatically.
Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, I remember reading about an EVS being used to play out graphics and other elements for a show, not just for replay. For static playout, what could the EVS offer that a HyperDeck or PlayoutBee can't?
Well, I mean, the EVS is, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily use it if I was only doing graphics and small elements. I mean, we might use it if we had it in the truck. But the EVS is so powerful when you, like we did I did a show on Monday where we used an EVS, and what we were doing is it was a very long, you've got all these interviews of people coming onto a red carpet, and they all come in and basically we have to take a show that's an hour and a half long and compact it down to 30 minutes. And so what you do is you're interviewing all those folks and you're just loading those into the EVS, as you go, and then you immediately bring them back as a live show and you just compact it all. We were able to just suck all the space out of it. But what was cool was in the last 15 minutes, it was all actually, like live on the location. So the first ones are all, so you're just cinching it out, and the ability to do that. And you can do that. Here's the crazy thing with EVS. You can do that while you could even do the last one while you're recording on the EVS. You can be playing out of the EVS at the same time you're recording. So you can be, so it's 10 seconds after you started recording, you hit play on it, it's just going to be right behind it, just playing it out as it's coming in, which is a very, very powerful thing. So the EVS is incredible when you know how to use it and you use it for the right things. Using it for just play out, we do that. But usually we do it because we're doing a bunch of other things. And we are going to, in 2 weeks, it was supposed to happen today, and I'm a little embarrassed by the fact, there's a whole bunch of, I told at the beginning, there's a whole bunch of rearrangement here, but Robert Green's going to come on and talk a little bit about EVSs in a couple of weeks. So he can answer a lot more of these questions in detail. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, you covered a lot of it. The EVS is a continuous recording device, like a TiVo or your DVR, that lets you pause live TV because it's continuing to record in a loop all the time. An EVS, usually the loop is a 24-hour loop or a 12-hour loop, depending on how much disk storage you have on it. But it's time code based, and it's always recording when you can play back. Both the HyperDeck and the PlayoutBee cannot be recording and playing back at the same time. You record, then you stop recording, and then you can go back and play back what you recorded, but it can't continue to record. So if you're going to go back and do a highlight, you're going to be missing some stuff unless you've got multiple PlayoutBees. One's always recording while the other one's doing playback, and then you have a problem of managing which one you're on and which one has the holes in it, and et cetera, et cetera. EVS handles it like a TiVo or like a DVR, where it records continuously and can play back that stuff, microseconds after it's been recorded, or an hour or 2 hours after it's been recorded, just by going to time code markers in that continuous 24-hour stream.
And the ability to trim EVS and clip things together and everything else is just a magical. So the other thing is that with the talented operator, they've got this this crazy little RS-232 controller with the little numbers and they know how to use it. But no one else does. Anyway, so you have to hire a EVS operator to make that actually work. But this is not one of those things like Blackmagic switchers. You can teach someone in a couple hours to use. EVSs you can teach in a couple of years, like of constant use. They slowly come up to speed where they're not. They start, most EVS operators, I think, Robert can tell us when he comes on, start off with like managing records. Like they're just managing records. We don't expect you to do any playback. We just need you to kind of understand what's what. And a lot of times when you're doing that, you're sitting there in front of the EVS for hours. And if you're smart, you'll sit there and play with it and try to figure out how to get the most out of it. And then you slowly move up to some basic playbacks. And after a long time, you might end up in a large broadcast or in football or whatever. So those are the things but it takes a long time to get good at it. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I had so many hopes for my HyperDeck shuttle. Just seemed interesting because it's got that beautiful shuttle wheel on it. And I just want to top and tail and build a playlist like EVS can do. If they did get the software together, it might not compete with it, but it might just be a great, usage.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
From Jen Zolson in Sagal, Idaho, it's a QR code question. Does the MixPre work with the new iPhone 15 Pro?
So I saw that question coming in, and I was kind of rushing around, throwing pieces together, trying to pull it all in. And I did. So I didn't quite get it all working, mostly because I grabbed an old MixPre that had 48 volt grayed out, which I've never seen before. So I have to figure that out. It does not like the power from the phone. We talked about this before. The MixPre wants a lot of power. So I put some batteries on the back. It did show up, and immediately when I plugged it into the phone, it said, "Hey, is this a headphone?" And I said, "Yes." And so there we go. Can it send out many channels into it? That's what I want to test next. Is can it put out 4 channels and deliver those to Blackmagic as an example? And I don't know if that's the case or not. Go ahead, Courtney.
When it identifies as a headphone and you say yes, does it accept inputs from the MixPre 3 as an interface, a microphone interface?
Yeah. So the problem was that what I couldn't figure out is I just grabbed a headset. I didn't have a dynamic mic like handy when I did that, and so I couldn't. And for some reason, I have a very old MixPre that was just sitting on my thing. I pulled it out and plugged it in, and for some reason, 48 volt is grayed out. I've never seen it grayed out before, so I didn't know what. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, you have to have a dual USB.
Mickey
connector.
said that 48 volt or grayed out means it's not getting enough current, which is, I guess, it didn't like the batteries. I put cheap batteries in it, and as you may have guessed, it took about 40 minutes for it to just idling. It killed those batteries. So anyway, but when I put them in, it wasn't probably the right ones. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, in the opening to the classic Europe music video for The Final Countdown, they show an engineer working with some sort of comms unit. Can anyone identify what it could be? There's a link to it.
This came in after. Hold on. I'm watching it. You can hear it in the background here. It's very old. I don't know.
It's really old. It's probably an RTS.
It's so old. Yeah, it's probably RTS.
Or Clearcom system.
My guess is RTS because it's kind of showing a truck. Every time you see RTS, you're like, oh, you use a truck. When you see Clearcom, I always think, oh, you're in events. And if you have a Riedel, I go, oh, you have a lot of money. And if you have RTS, I'm like, oh, you come from a truck. So those are the things. My guess is probably an RTS system. Next question.
Jack Ruppel from Breckenridge, Colorado, asking, shooting mainly outdoors with mirrorless 15 Pro Max GoPro opinions on matched neutral density filters for all.
Oh, man. I think, well, number one is I think that you want to match, you're going to want to really think about, you have to standardize your color balance, your color temperature, and your ISO to something that looks similar to each other under probably controlled lighting. And then you would, you're going to have to, it's just going to take some testing. I don't think, there's no mathematical, I'm sure there is a mathematical way to do this, but I don't know what it is. So I would take it out and get them, but you have to lock them. So I would use in the Blackmagic one, I would use the Blackmagic camera, make sure I set everything to manual, make sure I set things to a specific value. And then you're going to test that against the GoPro in largely a manual mode and try to figure out where those line up. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if you could put a matte box on it and just use the same neutral density filter, then do your color matching to make it happen? But yeah. I think that would mess your LiDAR up on your 15.
It could. I think that there's going to be some, you can get around 2 of the lenses, not the third lens, but 2 of the lenses without that. Go ahead, Courtney.
I'm not sure what he's trying to do to match the GoPro to the 15 Pro Max. Is that what he's trying to do?
Yeah.
In which case, both of those
ND
cameras,
filters.
Yeah, but even if you have matched ND filters, you might match the color shift for the ND filter, but the amount of exposure, is controlled differently on those 2 cameras because they change their shutter speed to control the amount of light coming in. So they might end up being different depending upon the speed of the lens in each individual camera to begin with. So it may not look the same anyway.
If you move them to all manual, though, you can line them up so that they're only, they're not doing anything automatically. And then I think that
but they pass a different amount of light through each lens. Lenses are different. The optical path is different, and the coloration of the lenses is different. You're going to have to fix it in post in any case. So I wouldn't worry too much about having matched neutral density filters.
I would try to get as close as you could before you. As a person who worked in post for a long time, the thing that drives us crazy is someone decided that it was there's no good way to do this, so we're not going to do anything on set, and then you're like, if you would have gotten them close, this would have looked a lot nicer. so like I think it's worth doing some R&D, and then decide making the decision there.
Yeah, we'll fix that in post.
Yeah, we had someone with a T-shirt that said, "How about we fix it in pre?" So anyway, next question.
Rajan Shandil from Los Angeles asking, what hub would you recommend to add multiple USB-C ports to a Mac and a PC?
I don't know which one specifically. It depends on what you're looking for. Generally, I lean towards OWC. So the OWC hubs are the most solid ones in my opinion. After that, it might Anchor and Geffen aren't bad ones either. But I would look for an OWC solution first, and then go to other things. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with OWC, and it depends on whether you want to maintain Thunderbolt 4 compatibility through those USB-C ports, and whether your PC and your Mac both supplied. You can always, it'll normally work for USB 3 or 3.1. Whether or not it'll carry Thunderbolt is another question. So you'd have to make sure that you get a dock. If you need Thunderbolt output for high speed, you have to make sure that it can pass Thunderbolt through those USB-Cs.
Next question.
Alton Christensen from New York City, New York, New York. I like the way the Blackmagic Camera app on iOS records time of day time code. Why don't other apps do the same?
Because they're not thinking about production. I think that, they don't. So here's the thing. A lot of the camera app manufacturers before Blackmagic arrived, really, this is where they started. They started on the phone. They didn't have other things. They didn't have other hardware. They didn't have to integrate into other productions. And so they were building something. They're like, oh, right, we should use timecode. And oh, yeah, that would be really good. Blackmagic came from the other direction. So they came in with, we already build cameras. We've spent the last decade talking to people about what our cameras didn't have or did have or whatever. So they went through a whole bunch of that. And they took all of that learning and just shoved it into the camera. I did a record last night. A very high-end record. My daughter's first rock band gig was last night, and so I shot the footage for it, and I used the Blackmagic. I wanted to use the Blackmagic. So the first time I've really shot anything more than about a 30-second test. What a great app! It's just like a really cool app with all the stuff exactly where I wanted it, and just kind of put it together. So I as a camera person's camera app on your phone. And so it's pretty impressive. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that there is a difference between time of day time code and professional time code, which is at 2398 because it's not real time. And the other thing is it's not, most of the clocks that are in, consumer type cameras are not temperature compensated crystals. So if they do have their local time code clock, it's not going to maintain accuracy over a long period of time if you have a way of jamming it together to jam it to something else. Because it'll drift over a period of time. So using it to be frame accurate to line up in post is kind of problematic. Well, they include it in there because it's useful for locating stuff just within a second or two. That's fine. Or within, however many frames it's out by drift. But just bear in mind that 0.1% is the drift between real time and non-drop time code, which is what's always recommended for recording. So it will drift quickly out of sync if you don't have that. If you don't have both things running in non-drop time code, which is not normally real time time of day.
Yeah, and I do believe the Blackmagic camera can be connected to a Tentacle, so a Tentacle sync to give it actual some time code there from a transmission. So those are other things it can do. So it's pretty cool. Next question.
Tony Mobley from Noonan, Georgia asks, if someone has an iPhone 14 Pro Max, should they upgrade to 15 Pro Max besides that USB-C connection?
The camera's a lot better, and now you can record ProRes and a lot of other things. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. For what you do, Tony, for the most part, I would say probably not. I don't think there's a lot the 14 is going to give you that the 15 doesn't. But if you're shooting on if you're thinking, oh, I might go out and shoot ProRes or I might go out and shoot these other things, then it might be worth it. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
It depends on your carrier. A lot of the carriers are offering you a free phone if you sign up for another 3 years contract or something. So if you're happy with your character and you want to get a new phone, a lot of times they'll give you a new one with a trade-in on the old one for free, as long as you agree to keep paying their exorbitant monthly subscription fees.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
QR code question from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. I want to draw, write, and make my own comic book on actual paper and custom merch with a 3D printer. How can I get my hand drawings into my M2? Is there an app to put these drawings together?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the easiest way to do it, actually, I mean, you can scan them. You can get a scanner and scan them. And for the kind of things of getting your drawing in, some of the less expensive, like all-in-one printer scanners will probably work fine for what you're trying to do. You can also take a picture of it. I take a lot of stuff where if you're just doing drawings that are going to be used as reference, take your iPhone out if you have an iPhone or an Android, and just take a photo of it. There's a lot of apps that will rectify any kind of distortion that happened there or any kind of perspective skew. It'll rectify those automatically and give you back an image that is relatively good. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I would oppose taking a picture of it because you have to deal with lighting and the angle of the camera versus the flatness of the drawing. So almost all of the all-in-one printers have a built-in color scanner that is pretty good. It's a line-operated CCD scanner with a line illuminator, so you will not have any shadows or any of those problems. And if it has a flat platant, flat glass on the top, so it's doesn't necessarily have to feed it through. It's a little safer to feed your priceless drawings through. You don't want them to jam up in the auto feeder, but I'd put them on the glass and scan them. Make sure you clean the glass first. And I think you'll get a pretty good color representation out of those scanners. It won't be maybe as HDR like you would with a phone, but a linear scanner is going to be a little more dimensionally accurate than a phone picture.
Next question.
QR code question from David in London, UK. The Atem Extreme ISO input 3 is not functioning and no image is displayed regardless of the source, including cameras and computers. Interestingly, when I insert an HDMI splitter, it starts working and displays an image. Any solution for this?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I know this sounds blatantly obvious, but try switching out the HDMI cable you're using to drive that input on 3, unless you're plugging in directly with different cables. You'd be surprised how many HDMI cables just will not work on different cameras and different devices. So swap the cable out with something you know works well.
Yeah, I think that it seems like I lean towards what Mitchell's talking about, that there's a problem with your cable. It just feels like that you might be taking that cable and plugging it into a bunch of things, but that still the cable is the thing that is the constant source there. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and the fact that if you put a splitter in, it could be the signal level, it could be the cable that you're using doesn't have, has an impedance mismatch, so the signal isn't getting a strong enough signal through it. But if you put it through the splitter, it's going to amplify that signal up to a point and reshape the signal a little bit, reclock the signal as it goes through that splitter. And it could have to do with HDCP, but it depends on if you're using a camera. It usually doesn't have the copyright. It's not normally encoded with HDCP. But remember, Atem does not support HDCP, so if you have something that has the copyright bit set, like a Blu-ray player, and you plug it in, it may be black because of HDCP.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, as a reference, go to the Condor Blue website and look what Gerald Undone has to say about different HDMI cables. Literally, he tried different cables from different manufacturers, including Amazon, and some would work with his Sony camera, some would not. So it might be best if it's if it's blue or purple.
Next question.
Next question coming in from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. I had someone to tell that my iPhone as my camera is a bad idea that should replace with a Brio. I disagree with. What does the panel think? I used the Shoot app with the iPhone.
The iPhone, if you have an iPhone 14, I'm only saying that because you asked the last question, the video quality on the iPhone 14 will be higher than the Brio considerably. Like, it's not close. Anything probably past the iPhone 11 is probably better than the Brio as far as the total quality. The disadvantage is that you've got your phone tied up in something, and you might get messages, or you might need it, or you might other things. So, but if you're going for video quality, your iPhone is going to be better. Apple spends more money on it than Logitech. So they've got, Logitech, I'm sure, has a great engineering team. Apple's got 200 or 300 engineers that only pay attention to the camera. So and that's from like a CNN interview years ago, and that's probably twice as many now. So I think that I would stick with the Apple Color Science over the Brio. The only thing I would say is just convenience, the chance of it doing something other than that. Those are the only things that that would affect my decision there. Next question.
From the QR drop, here's a question from Michael Tan in San Diego, California. What best states to move to for media production jobs? San Diego is getting a little expensive.
I mean, there are media production jobs all over. It's just a matter of finding a community that you can be part of and being useful in that community. Go ahead, Courtney.
Depends on what kind of media you want to work in. If you're looking for theatrical features, move to Atlanta, because most of the theatrical feature work moved to Atlanta because the state was paying big incentives to producers to move their productions there. So there's a lot of union work and non-union work in Atlanta. Also, New Orleans is another runaway state if you're looking to move somewhere where it has a robust production environment. New Orleans or Atlanta are two big non-coastal states that have a large amount of film and video production going on.
Good, Mitchell.
Yeah, speaking for the East Coast, we have a little bit of a media recession here in the Mid-Atlantic region, including Philadelphia. But if you go to Pittsburgh is thriving for production. So if you want to try someplace out on the East Coast, come out here. And of course, the ever-present Washington, D.C. is always very busy.
Yeah, and in the early 90s, the only place that made more movies than Pittsburgh, of all places, was Hollywood. It was the busiest one, and Pittsburgh, it was not, and it was because all of Pittsburgh. The weirdest twist. Pittsburgh is a very heavy union town, but the big thing was the film crews were not union, and that's why everyone was shooting there, is because you could make Pittsburgh look like anything. Just got all these different communities. You could make it look like New York or Chicago or whatever, depending on where you shot, and it was all non-union crew. So the New York unions came in to unionize the Pittsburgh, and the first time they came in, actually when they went into the meeting, a bunch of Pittsburgh film crew picked up their car and turned it upside down and set it back down. And they flipped their car to tell them to go away, and they pushed them off. But, over, depending on who you talk in Pittsburgh, it was a pretty rough negotiation. Some folks got hurt, in Pittsburgh. And they finally, unionized, and then everything was gone. It all went to New York. And I think that in Pittsburgh, most of us felt like the unionization was just to bring the work back to New York and not let it be in Pittsburgh. And so that's what happened in Pittsburgh. And so now it's regaining its stuff, but it was building up to be the center of, it was an incredible amount of work that was being done there for a while. And then it just dried up. Literally the month after they unionized, it disappeared. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, not to get into too deep a discussion on that, but here in the Philadelphia region, we're a little jealous of Pittsburgh. We're in the same state. How much of the work ends up going there? And I think it's partly because the New York Union has a little bit more control over Philadelphia being that much closer.
Yeah, the issue in Pittsburgh, though, is that to be honest with you, it's safer to shoot in Pittsburgh than it is in Philadelphia. I know that I talk to folks about that, and it's not a matter of the union. It's a matter of that Pittsburgh is it's not that it's perfect, but Philadelphia has gotten a little hectic, to shoot in some parts of town. And I think that there's not as many places in Pittsburgh that are that way. There are some, but not as many. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, what you might look for is right-to-work states, because these don't allow the unions in to monopolize production in that particular state. You have the right to work, so they don't have to. The unions have less control. Although there is a lot of union work in those right-to-work states, they just have different contracts that are much lower than the rates that you would get in their standard basic agreement that's implemented on the West Coast or the East Coast.
And you
We'd love to have you here in Delaware.
The thing to remember is that it doesn't matter if you're doing a major film production, it's going to be a union production anyway, because the production companies, we saw all these negotiations, are signatories, and so they're signatories, and so they've already agreed to work with the union. And and I will say, I mean, I don't want to sound like I was negative against that. It just that it really hurt Pittsburgh specifically. But there is a stability of being able to call the union and say, I need this many people and this many people and this many people. And you have people who have a reasonably good chance of knowing what they're doing, showing up. Trying to staff that without the hall is pretty complicated for a lot of these things. So there's a stability that the union adds to the production that is very valuable. Go ahead, Courtney.
But there are ways around that what a lot of production companies will do, especially with commercial production. They'll want, let's say their DP is a union, he insists on being paid in the union. But you got a lot of local people that aren't in the union. There's not a local where you're shooting. You can, they hire payroll companies, and the payroll company serves as the signator so that they are the employer of reference, employer of record, so that the payroll company can have two branches, a non-union branch and a union branch. And if you're in the union, you run your payroll through the union branch. If you're non-union, you run it through the non-union branch of the same payroll company. And that's how they handle getting mixed crews with union and non-union in the same crew, although it is frowned upon by the union.
Yeah, and I will say in non-union like strongholds, you know, like LA and New York, a lot of the union guys work non-union when they're not being called by the hall. Like that kind of happens there. But you're right that, I mean, I think that I don't know if there's a specific state. I know that, you know, North Carolina is has gotten pretty, you know, big as far as some of these things. So North Carolina is a pretty good production state right now. I think that there's a lot building up in Texas and Florida as well. So for a variety of reasons, and so those are other states to look at in those areas. But the biggest thing is that you want to. It's really where your community is. I see media production being done pretty much all over the world. It's just a matter of who you know in that location is what's gonna make the difference. Next question.
From Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas, is the office hours equipment stack's frame rate actually 30 or 29.97?
We run 29. We run 29.97, and then I think it's converted to 30 on the way out. But you can't. It's really hard to run video equipment at 30. Like you may stream it at 30 going out, but you can't. It's painful to run everything in whole frames because everything's designed around those drop frames. Next question.
Next question coming in, I believe, is already been answered, but it's a QR code coming from Abe Barrera in Flowery Branch. What's your opinion on Twit TV regarding business? Will they be able to continue, or will they have to change the way they work?
Yes and yes. They will be able to continue, and they will have to change the way they work. I think that's what's going to happen, and I think that they're all figuring out what that looks like, and that's going to include Club Twit, which I think is really, I mean, I was a proponent that Club Twit, that kind of thing, was where to go from early on. So I think that Leo's going the right direction of having people be part of the conversation there and being less dependent on advertisers. And I think that they're doing all the right things in that area. So it's just hard it's one of those things that just takes a long time to build up. Next question.
Peter Belbin from Houston, Texas wants to know, with the impending SpaceX Starship test launch coming up soon, which way do you like to watch it? Directly from SpaceX or via other YouTube streamers, or a combination perhaps? And are there particular reasons why?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I like to watch it lying on the beach at Boca Chica. It's much more exciting there.
There you go. I think that, I mean, they keep on getting better at it. I feel like SpaceX is the furthest along as far as the launch goes. And I will say that the Blue Origin ones have gotten better as well. So those two, I feel like there's a real opportunity that is lost a lot of times in really adding a lot of data and making every one of these launches a bit of a education lesson and getting people excited about space. And, you know, you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the launch. You might as well use it as a backdrop to teach kids and inspire the next generation of astronauts and engineers and so on and so forth. And I feel like they lose that opportunity when they don't do that. Next question.
Tony Mobley from Newnan, Georgia, asking, is there an opportunity for office hours to use GPTs in its production?
You know, not yet. And I don't think that it would be something we would do anytime particularly soon. Where we think GPT is going to make a difference in some things is when we have really high volumes of questions and being able to group them and manage them and so on and so forth. Not necessarily generating questions or generating content, but really helping us manage the content more intelligently and hand it back to an operator in a way that would be very, very difficult to even have, even if you had a crew. So for some of the shows that we do with Mukana, or an offset of Mukana we call Commenda, I think the record that we've had right now is about over 6,000 questions in 20 minutes. So here we have 41 questions in 2 hours, but we have a much higher volume on some of the other things we use the product for. It would be nice. Right now, we just kind of go through them as fast as we can, but it would be nice to go through them and figure things out on the way through. And so that's the thing. Those are the things we think that AI is going to be good to help us with, because even if there's a certain level of efficiency of management of I can add a lot of people, it's not going to help me. I need something to be able to look at all of this stuff instantly as it comes in, but then still hand it to a human to make the final decisions on those processes. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and if you're on the Windows side of the world, this machine that I'm on now just updated itself to 23H2, which is the latest version of Windows that has Copilot built in. So whenever I do a search or something, I just type into the URL of the Edge browser, and it immediately uses GPT 3 or 4 to research whatever question I asked, and it gives me a nice verbal output. Organized correctly that I could read directly if I wanted to, but I look at when it comes back from a search rather than just a standard Google search with links that I would have to follow up with.
Next question.
Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas. A follow-up question on a previous Sunday. Any update on smart switch self-use of energy? I still have issues with them warming up due to powering Wi-Fi and perhaps the amount of energy used to activate relays when on.
Yeah, we haven't gone very far on that, so we'll keep on trying to figure that out. I keep on meaning to do a kilowatt on mine just to see what it's actually using. I think is one of the things we were talking about is like how much is it used when it's off, and I don't know what that number is, and so we'll keep on. I do have a kilowatt in I just haven't been able to get it working. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I have a problem in my house that I just discovered the other day because now that it's getting cool, I have electric heaters because there's no central air in this 100-year-old building. So I have electric heaters, and I find that if I turn on 2 electric heaters, they're 1,500 watts each, which is the maximum allowable. I have my UPS here, which has a voltage readout. It drops to 94 volts, which is a bit of a problem because the wiring in this building can't handle much more than that. So I don't know what I can do about that. I just have to wear thicker clothing and only use one heater at a time. Otherwise, things that my, vacuum sealer doesn't work quite as well because it doesn't get hot enough at 94 volts. And so far, the computers haven't reset, which is nice, and they're running off the UPS. But I hear the UPS click in all the time whenever a heater comes on or whenever a printer warms up.
Do you ever use a voltage rectifier?
A voltage rectifier?
Yeah, we have these little boxes that we use around the world because we have the same problem you're having.
To convert AC to DC, you mean?
Nope.
Well, that's what a rectifier does.
But what I mean, what it does is it brings, no matter what voltage it comes in, what goes out is 120 or 240 or 220, whatever you set it to. It's gonna always so we plug stuff into that. Like the reason we got into that because there was one day in Zimbabwe where I was
the voltage regulator, not rectifier.
I'm sorry, I meant regulator. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry.
So it's a long morning. Anyway, but the regulator, we had one where we were in Zimbabwe, and they turn the power off regularly, to load balance and for the things, and so you always have 4 to 6 in the afternoon was always just no electricity, and so which was actually quite relaxing. It was tea time, so we would have. So we would have tea and then sit around and talk and think about things and everything else because nothing else to do. And we had laptops, so we could do some stuff. Anyway, when it came back on, within the first half hour, sometimes you got these surges, and we suddenly realized there was one day we looked up and we were like, it's really bright in here. I can't quite figure out what happened. And then literally sparks were coming out of our power supplies, and that was the end of that. And so so we started getting really focused on those, and I put them into old buildings all the time now, and it just means that nothing gets the wrong. You have to be careful of how many amps you're pulling. So I wouldn't put it in the heater, but I'd put it in all the electronics because that voltage up and down the computers will run. We found this in Africa. The computers will keep running, but the power supply will slowly die. Like it'll just slowly, it'll just one day you'll get up and it's not working anymore. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the power supply will overheat if you get below 90 volts and eventually fail. That's a big problem. One time, here's a short story because we have some time. In college, I was at the university, Texas A&M University, and in a dorm room. It was the night before finals. And was watching TV, and suddenly I noticed that the TV picture was getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And I thought, gee, are the lights quite as bright? And I looked out the window, and the entire campus was getting dimmer and dimmer. You think you're going blind because all the lights, the TV's getting smaller, all the lights are dimming everywhere you can see out the window. The street lights, everything is getting dimmer and dimmer. And what happened is the main generator, that campus has its own generating facility. The main generator had blown a bearing, and the online generator was slowing down and slowing down, and the whole campus just dimmed down to zero. It took about 5 minutes for it to spin down, but it was strange, and it blew up a lot of equipment.
Oh, man. Next question.
Next one in from Robin Cutshaw in Atlanta, Georgia. I'd like to test vMix on Windows with 8 HDMI inputs and outputs. What devices do you use for PC HDMI connections?
I would use, I think that Blackmagic makes deck links that are 4 each. So probably do 2 cards and you should be able to get 8 HDMI inputs there. But you could get higher density if you went to SDI. But if you're doing HDMI, two Blackmagic deck link cards would do the job. You can't get any density that I know of higher than 4 and it's just the way the HDMI works. You can't get any in them closer. You can actually get 16 in. There's AJA makes a card that's 16 in on SDI, the mini DINs. Next question.
Next one in from Douglas Carmichael. I bit the bullet and subscribed to ChatGPT Plus. What would you recommend to use to its fullest?
Go, John.
I use it for everything. I use every outgoing piece of composition that I write now goes out GPT Plus first. So you're using it in normal business communications. It's super helpful in writing websites, which was the number one hurdle in getting websites done for clients, is writing their description of their own company, which would take weeks. Now that stuff's a breeze on GPT. And then I don't know how many plugins. There's over 800 plugins now, and there's probably 3 good ones. But all the newest, latest, greatest features, the GPTs, it's true. Yeah. The GPTs is where I would set some focus and kick around and create some of your own GPTs. You'll get some good momentum there.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I heard, I haven't tested it yet, I'm not a member, but that they paused new memberships right now because they were so overloaded that they couldn't handle the workload now for GPT-3, and that the free stuff is no longer available at all, and the subscription stuff they put a moratorium on and limited the number of people that can sign up is what I heard. I haven't verified that yet.
Yeah, I use it a lot. I mean, I have been having fun with it. The images that it makes, for instance, you can do DALL-E now with it, and the images that it makes aren't as realistic as what Midjourney does, but you can negotiate with it better. So you can say, like, I'll put something up and I'll say, do this. And then I just say, no, not that many people, or this needs to be a different lighting, or I don't have to sit there and try to figure out the prompt. I just sit there and just give it the adjustments I want it to make. And it's just much easier to get to a certain look. It just doesn't make it as realistic. So if you're looking for realism, you still go to Midjourney. But I use it I have it open every day. I use it a lot just for brainstorming. What does this do? How does this work? Or explain to me as if I'm a 5th grader, like, this, and the key there is that and I've said this before, I tell ChatGPT, this is who you are. This is what I want you to do, and this is the target. I'm a student, I'm a teacher, I'm a whatever, and it will reframe all of that very effectively. And then beyond all of that, I make a lot of soups that are all designed by ChatGPT. It's actually in a training. I got a request from NHK in Japan. Can we use the pictures in your description for the ChatGPT? And I was like, sure. I sent them all the stuff. Next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, asking, I need to replace my current iPhone camera in my setup. I have extra iPhones to use. Should it only have iPhone camera apps like Shoot and Filmic?
I would definitely limit the apps to exactly what you need. If you're going to use it as a camera, use it as a camera. You want to make sure that, whatever you're using, make sure you can remote control from another phone. I haven't tried that with Shoot. Shoot's a great app, but Filmic definitely does that. So think about, that process there. Next question.
Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington. I need to replace my pull-apart foam from my Pelican 1500 series case. Moving camera equipment in and out has made it a mess over time. Any brand of case foam recommendations?
Yeah, there is a hold on, let me just see if I can find it really quickly. There's a company, it's My Case Builder, and we actually talked to them at we talked to them at NAB, and they have a lot of the stuff built in. So you can go in and design, like I have this camera and I have this lens, and you can lay it all out in their software on their website, and then they will print it out. Anything that people have done before, or they can do something custom for you. They make a really nice, I looked at the stuff, and if I ever needed it, I don't do as much of that now, where I need the same thing every time. But if I need the same thing every time, mycasebuilder.com is exactly where I would go. Go ahead, Courtney.
I don't have any brand recommendations, but a lot of times when I was building cases and ordering foam, I would avoid the polyester foam, which is the normal, very flexible foam, and go with ethofoam, which is polyethylene foam. And the polyethylene foam is the kind that you can get with that healed surface on it, so it's got a smooth surface on it. It is far less shock absorbing than the polyester foam, but it holds up and won't disintegrate, won't oxidize, and a lot of problems with some of the older polyester foams is over years, after being exposed to oxygen, they turn into dust, which gets into all of your equipment and contaminates it. And polyethylene foam I've had for 50 years in cases, and it's still solid, hasn't broken down at all.
Next question.
Robin Cutshaw from Atlanta, Georgia asked, follow up on my HDMI input output to my PC for vMix. I don't have sufficient PCIe slots for cards. External HDMI input and output?
I don't know how you get a lot of high density of internal output other than getting something like a Sonnet box or some kind of box for your PC that's going to be it's going to be a USB-C to it, but I don't even know if you could get the speeds that you need. So I think it's a little bit more complicated if you have to go outside of your box and get that kind of density, but I haven't done external devices. You may still need at least a PCI to plug in so that you could get the external devices back onto that bus. Go to Courtney.
Yeah, there's some people that make an NVMe adapter that goes into an NVMe that accesses the PCI bus directly on some smaller machines.
Right.
And then you can bring that out to a card holder that can hold an outboard card that could give you multiple inputs. So you might look into an adapter like that plugs into an NVMe connector.
Next
if
question.
you have multiple NVMe connectors on your laptop or whatever.
Next question.
Peter Belbin, Houston, Texas. Can I or could I use the Sound Devices MixPre 2 to act as a host to a USB-connected audio interface to expand the physical I/O and perhaps use USB for Dante connectivity, USB AVO?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I heard that you cannot plug the AVO, but I don't have personal knowledge of that, but I was poo-pooed on that particular question some time ago.
Yeah, you could plug, yeah, I don't think you could plug I don't think you could do the USB AVO into a MixPre. That wouldn't have the proper, drivers or whatever to do that. It's just not how the MixPre is designed. It's not designed to bring in more audio that way. So that wouldn't work, but you could take an audio that was punched out to analog. It wouldn't extend your MixPre, but it would allow you to deliver, if you had analog to Ethernet, it would allow you to deliver via Dante to a MixPre if you wanted to without plugging into something else. Go ahead, Courtney. Can't hear you, Courtney.
I agree. Although the MixPres do have USB ports on them, they're designed for work with HID devices like keyboards and mouse, rather than hosting USB AVC inputs.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, and if you want to get Dante, you can go up to, I think it's a Series 8 or a Scorpio, and it has Dante built in.
There you go. Well, very good. good set of questions here from our producers. So thanks for keeping this all running and letting us have a great conversation this morning. Filled up the whole 2 hours. I thought we might fill up an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 20, but we got all the way through and about the same average number of questions there. And thanks to the panel. We can't do this without you. So it's good to have everybody here. And it was good conversation. That worked out really well. So anyway, so thanks to the panel for being here and being part of the conversation. Tomorrow, of course, we'll be talking about the website and what people want to see and what features we want to have there. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that makes this all work every single day. We have not missed a day. I keep it when I say it, it now feels like I've been saying it a couple times recently. We've not missed a day since March 25th, 2020. That was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. And there was some point where I thought this was going to last like 3 or 4 months, and we would just try to help everybody. And then it gets to a point where you're like, well, I don't want to quit now, or you don't want to slow down now because we've gotten such a good pattern. But the only reason we can do that is because of the incredible team that's managing this, developing software and process, and also just developing making all of this work and actually executing this on every single day. And we really appreciate your contribution. We can't do this without you. We traveled 105,000 miles today answering all these questions. That's 169,000 kilometers. And that is 836 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. Yeah, those batteries did not. I grabbed some like consumer batteries that I just use in the house. I was like digging them out and put them into the MixPre, and it did not. Man, it was like gone.
Aren't they likely to leak?
10 minutes.
Nah, they didn't do 10 minutes. It actually did. It did 40 minutes before it was like, hey, we're dying. This was 40 minutes. And it was like, but you got to get, I put in the Amazon basics. Like these are like my house ones, you know, and it did not handle that very well.
The batteries are on the outside of the MixPre 3, so they clip on in this little removable caddy. So,
and I only have, the one I have is the 4. You know, I only have the 4 battery one.
Yeah, there's an 8 battery one too.
There's a dummy battery version.
Doesn't last for
the dummy battery version.
40 minutes, but I wasn't doing anything. No, this was a 4. It's got like a little, it's got like a little, it'll hold 4 of them in here. But it was like, I thought that the question